Hello, and welcome to this special edition of the ILEETA Learning Lab. I'm Joe Willis, the Deputy Executive Director, and I'm here today with Dave Anderson. He's giving a class at ILEETA, how to train and develop leaders of character within your agency at the 2026 conference. And I'm super excited to talk to you, Dave, today about this course and what we can expect to see. So without any further ado, I'm just going to turn it over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the course.
Yeah, Joe, thank you. Well, as I tell people, I am the son of an Army general. My father went to West Point, and I went to West Point. He did 43 years active duty in the Army. I know, Joe, you did. You did your turn, but he did 43 years active duty.
Double what I did. Literally double what I did. Wow.
And I only did 4. So I got out of the Army after Desert Storm and spent 20 years in corporate America. And then since 2012, I've been running my own business, doing leadership training, consulting. But what I do with law enforcement really started back in 2017 with one of my West Point classmates, a guy named Dan Colasano, who is a SWAT lieutenant in the Dallas area, actually in Garland, Texas. After he read our book, Becoming a Leader of Character, he read it and said, Dave, we've got nothing in any of our leadership curriculum in law enforcement that addresses the issue of character in leadership. You should develop a curriculum for that. And since 2017, I've been working with law enforcement agencies across the country and getting to keynote addresses and things about the issue of character and leadership, and developed curriculum specifically for brothers and sisters in law enforcement.
Awesome. So kind of walk us through this particular class. You've only got an hour and 45 minutes. During this time, what is it that you're going to present, and kind of what should I expect when I walk into the class?
Yeah, actually, I think I got one of the longer slots.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Dave. You are a 3 hour and 45 minute. Yeah,
don't rush it. I missed one of the updates that the email updates you sent.
No. My apologies, everyone. It is one of the 4 hour blocks. And super excited because I think this is a topic that you literally, if you try to do it in the 2 hour block, you could cover a lot of great stuff, but to really get into depth, you need time. You need time for things to marinate and settle. So awesome. I'm glad you did that.
Yeah. Well, and the whole idea behind this is, and really, if anybody's read the book, because it's been very popular in law enforcement for a number of years now, if anybody's read the book, we talk about why a lot of leadership development is failing. And we were talking in the book about corporate world, but it's the same for us in law enforcement here, is the fact that most of our training it's like we're giving Robitussin to a pneumonia patient and wondering why people aren't getting any better. We are treating the symptoms and not the disease.
Right.
So, we're doing things like DEI and emotional intelligence and personality assessments and ethics trainings and all those types. And these are all good medicines. I mean, they're good training, but are we really seeing the needle move very far with all these things?
Move the needle.
Yeah, we're not moving the needle with these things. Because we're only treating symptoms. The disease is a character issue underlying these symptoms. And we're talking, and so we're giving Robitussin to a pneumonia patient, wonder why they're not getting any better. We've all been there. Joe, you've seen it. You sat in training. I sat in training, whether it was in the military or when I was my corporate career, where, on something like sexual harassment, which is what we called it when I was, when I was going through those trainings. But then I'd sit next to somebody, and a week later, I hear something come out of their mouth, and I'm like, are you kidding me? You just said that? See, we talk about leadership being a blend of competence and character. Competence is knowing what to do and how to do it. But character is about who we are and the habits that we build that become who we are. So the people who sat there and that thing came out of their mouth, it wasn't that they lacked competence, knowing what to do and how to do it. It was a failure of character. Yet we keep doing competency training, and we're wondering why we're not moving the needle.
Yeah, I love it. How do you, so in that case, let's get after that. And I know in the book you talk about the 6 habits, and habits are trainable, they're developable versus traits, which may not be. So, talk to us a little bit about what it is you do to train and develop character. How do you evaluate character, I guess?
Well, one of the things that we do is we offer everybody, and if people come to the session, they'll get a chance to take this, a character assessment. It takes 5 minutes to do, and it's a look in the mirror moment. Hey, ask a few questions, hey, this is where my character is right now. And I mentioned my father. He used to say to me when I was in trouble in high school, he used to call me Bud. And one time he said to me, "Hey, Bud, if what you're about to say is your first instinct, go with your second." Right. And so what we deal with here is lots of us have personalities, or you can go with your bias and talk about biases and things, which are those first instincts. And some people say, well, that's just the way I am. And I'm like, no, those are your instincts. You're choosing to be this person at this moment. And your habits, and we talk about habits and character. Habits are made up of our choices. So the more we choose something, the more it becomes a habit, the more likely, the easier it gets the next time and the next time and the next time. And you can talk about working out, you can talk about smoking, it's the same principles. But when we're talking about habits of character like courage or humility or integrity, selflessness, duty, positivity, these are developed the same way, one choice at a time. I always tell people you're born with your personality, but you develop your character.
Yeah, I love it. And so let's then, I understand what you're saying about the day-to-day choices that almost like the wakes breaking off the bow of a boat. We can see where it's been, and that's what character looks like in the long run. When you see the failures of leadership as it relates to character, what are some of the things you're seeing that this course could potentially help us address?
Well, I mean, when I was at IACP, I got an opportunity to speak at IACP, and that's when I first met some of the ILEETA members who encouraged me to put in to be one of the speakers at ILEETA. And but when I spoke to the chiefs all there, I told them, I said, let's think about this. There are 2 types of leadership decisions leaders need to make in law enforcement. There are tactical decisions and there are non-tactical decisions. Which decisions are getting leaders in trouble? It's not the tactical decisions. It's the non-tactical decisions where character comes into play that get leaders in law enforcement in trouble. Yet we train the snot out of tactics over and over and over again.
I'd even argue this. So let's talk that tactical and non-tactical or character-based decision making. When we see tactics fail, yes, there are times where a person could have button hooked faster or whatever, or maybe over penetrated. Those things, yes, there are mistakes made there. But when you talk about that's a mistake of the mind or whatever, but a mistake of the heart, that's another thing. And so oftentimes when we see tactics fail, it's rushing. It is the humility sometimes, right? Seeing the person as a person, and oftentimes. So in this moment where tactics fail, I would often challenge people: is it truly tactical, or has it become ego based and something more associated with character? So yeah, I'm excited to see where that goes. Now, as you present this in the various forums you do, what sort of reception do you get from attendees? My guess is it's not always overly welcoming. Yeah, let's talk about character. But I think as you have the conversation, that may evolve. What are you experiencing?
It's probably what a lot of us do who are training law enforcement. You always get those guys who walk in with their arms crossed, like this, and they're like, okay. And especially a guy who doesn't have law enforcement in his background, they're really ready to, put me through the ringer. But what ends up happening is everybody, I mean, I've got years of feedback forms now where I have people fill out feedback, years of forms where those grizzled veterans, those hard nuts, sit there and say, this is what we need. I wish I would have had this earlier in my career. Why aren't more people talking about this? And this is why I've become so passionate working with public safety, because I also get to do work with fire services as well. And I've pretty much I just still do corporate work, but it's very small what we do. I'm so passionate about working with public safety because this is where the rubber meets the road. Everybody in public safety, these are the people who impact our communities more than anybody else, any corporate or a corporation does, because of the day-to-day interactions they have with people in the community. And this idea of character and understanding that, yeah, all these tactical choices that we're trained on that we get to make and need to make are important, right? However, without an equal focus on character, well, that's kind of what's gotten us where we are right now in a lot of people's minds, right? Not saying there's not people of good character in law enforcement. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this if I thought there wasn't. It's the idea of how do we educate ourselves and then take it to others. How do we, inspire? And our why in our company is to inspire and equip people to become leaders of character, who then inspire and equip others to lead with character. So when I go into an agency, yes, it is about those leaders I'm working with who are right in my face, but I spend a lot of time working with them. Now, how do you take it to the next levels? So some guy from Texas isn't needed to show up and do this and talk about this stuff. We try to help prepare them to have those conversations themselves. So the leaders on the ground should be the ones doing this character development, not some guy from out of town.
Yeah. What would you say? So as you kind of look at that downstream piece of this and influencing the influencers, to those who might say, well, we do more background screening to become a police officer than your average company anywhere out there. Above and beyond, law enforcement officers are ethical and, above reproach most of the time. So where are we seeing the slippages? And to those who would say we're already doing this, what would your response be?
I would say that having periodic conversations and doing background checks at the front end of somebody's career does not guarantee that's what you're going to have 15, 20 years down the road. There's a statement that I love. It says, we don't drift our way into excellence in anything. And if that goes with character more than anything else, without attention to this, without specifically discussing this. And Joe, in the background at West Point, when you bring in 18-year-olds from 50 different states and all these different countries who have all different socioeconomic backgrounds and racial disparities and everything, and they all come together and they spend 4 years in that training lab, that character lab, one of the main things they do is bring them together in honor classes, which is what really was character classes. Yep. And they shape and these discussions that are going on throughout that time. And then in the military, as officers, we had officer professional development that happened all the time. And it wasn't tactically based stuff exclusively. It was a mix of both the tactically based stuff and these ethical, moral issues that we would have to deal with as officers in the military and discuss those things. And that doesn't stop after the academy was over. That didn't stop after 18 weeks or after basic training. That was throughout the entire career, because without attention, we tend to drift.
Yes. And literally, drift is one of the words I wrote down here because I wanted to talk about the potential for that. So you hit the nail on the head there. There's the background screening and the bright-eyed, bushy-tailed 21-year-olds who are graduating the academy and getting out there, and the best-intentioned leaders among the agency. But inevitably, there is a drift that happens over time. Various things get in our thought processes and can influence how we make decisions. And to be fair, regardless of how many death by PowerPoint classes we get on ethics, it is different than the approach of actually developing the habits that lead to character development. And that's really what you're trying to get after, if I understand correctly. It is not a one and done thing. It is a continuous evolution of an individual's character.
And we've tried to set up a curriculum that provides the agencies that we work with equips them with the curriculum so these conversations continue. So at the beginning of every shift, a sergeant can be lead, as opposed to going through that same old, well, last night on Main Street we had this happen, and tomorrow today we've got a convention coming into town, we need a staffing here. No, those are all transactional, important conversations to have. But if a leader at the beginning of every shift stopped and said, hey, let's talk about courage, which our definition is acting despite perceived or actual risk. Let's talk about this for a second here, and a scenario, and we provide the scenarios. We provide that, and that supervisor has facilitator questions. We provide all that for organizations. So everybody's having these conversations on a consistent basis, and all of a sudden young officers and grizzled veterans are going, holy crap, they're serious about this. Yeah. This is how it sinks from head knowledge into here, into the heart, is by continuously discussing it, not just kind of drifting around hoping people make the right decisions. I told it. I said to the chiefs at IACP, I said, raise your hand here if the first thing that you do when you wake up in the morning is grab your cell phone to see if anybody did anything stupid last night. And, and they all kind of laugh and say, and I say, look, hope is a great thing to have, but it's a terrible leadership strategy. We can't hope our people make wise choices when their character is tested. We need to prepare them for those choices. We need to prepare them for those moments. And that can't just happen once at the beginning of a career. It needs to be a continuous discussion going on all the way throughout their career, whether or not they're straight out of the academy or they are a deputy chief or a 30-year patrol officer.
Yeah, I love it. And I think there's a lot to do with culture in what you just offered there. How important is character development of individuals, but also of the group of individuals when it comes to the empowerment and the betterment of organizational culture? Yeah.
Well, I always say to people, I said, which would you rather have? Would you rather have be managing a compliant group or leading a committed team? See, what we're talking about when you got a leader of character and characters, you have an organization of character. I move away from that word culture, and I talk about organizational character because that's truly what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Our definition of organizational character is it's an organization's demonstrated values. Not just the stuff we have on our challenge coins.
Right.
It's what is it like to actually work here? And not just how do we behave when we're in front of members of the community, Mrs. Smith, but also among ourselves when we're back in the station.
The roll call room, those group texts, the various places that we see drift, and we know it in the moment when we see it. What's happening, who's making the decision, acting on a habit to do the right thing in this moment. And
so much of that organization's character comes down to the leaders exercising character themselves and saying, hey, this is not how we do things here. That, hey, we have standards. We're not going to we are not going to let the standards slide. By the way, standards are just minimums. They aren't goals. They're minimums. We're going to maintain the minimums around here. We are going to make sure something comes out of that person's mouth we're going to say, come here, let's sit down, have a conversation, and if they don't change their behaviors, then unfortunately we're doing the paperwork to make sure that person gets the consequences, all the way up to the point where we're sending them in front of the city manager or the city attorney to end their employment.
Yep. And I mean, there's numerous examples of times where those that that slide, that slope that we often find ourselves on. And I can speak for myself. There are times where in my career, I kind of find that I was sliding a little bit. But other times we see people dropping, and it should have been addressed here as it started the decline. And by the time it finally gets addressed, as you just said, we're sitting with HR trying to figure out how to, thank this person for their service and tell them to move on because it's gone too far now.
I've worked with different agencies where they've had one of those headline type moments, those ugly headline type moments. Oh, yeah. And I'll ask the people in the agency, hey, were you surprised that it was that person who got in trouble? And everybody's like, nope. And why didn't anybody do anything about it earlier? Why didn't a supervisor, when that person was a young cop, why didn't that supervisor have the courage, the integrity, and exercise the duty to do what needed to be done at that moment? Maybe could have pulled that person out of that pattern of behavior that created that terrible event later on down the road. But then there were supervisors throughout that person's career that didn't do their job almost every single time.
100%. We see it all the time. So inevitably, like, Dave, I got to tell you, this is impressive. The book is impressive, but you've got a full curriculum here as well. I mean, you've definitely done the hard work. So, we've talked about this, and everybody who comes to ILEETA knows that the person standing at the front of the room facilitating these conversations cannot be in there for a sales pitch. Inevitably, though, folks are going to get the opportunity to connect with you for that sort of thing. So in the event that I have no budget, I cannot buy a training package at this time, what am I going to leave your class with? Regardless of all this other great stuff, I'm going to leave your class and I can go back to my agency and make a difference. What would you say?
Yeah, I would say this, that going back to that principle that the non-tactical decisions versus the tactical decisions, we're going to be talking about something that people don't talk about enough, if they talk about it at all, which is how do we shape the character of the people within our organizations? And we're going to walk through a personal character development thing that people in the room are going to say, okay, I see how this applies to me. But then they're going to also walk out with an outline of how they can take this and build this into what they do within their agencies. Like I mentioned, on those shift turnovers here, how do we do that? It's not just about bringing some guy in from out of town. It's about, hey, what do leaders do on the ground? I always say training is an event, but development is a process. So what I might be doing a training event here, but what I'm going to hopefully hand to everybody and give everybody some things to think about and work on when they walk out is the fact that I know what I can do to start developing the leaders around me, right? And maybe even using some of the curriculum ideas that we share that to start building a curriculum around that. And like I said, we're there to equip them as well. You mentioned the resources. We've got the resources. I'll be at our booth even after I speak. I think the booth's open. I'm doing one of the earlier sessions, so I'm going to be at one of the booths after we speak, so I can talk to anybody about the materials and things that we have there. But my hope and my prayer is when somebody walks out of there, they're like, yeah, I've got something I can go home and implement right off the bat.
I love it. And it sounds as though your class is not going to be one of those where you're standing at the front of the room with a whole bunch of slides that you're presenting off of, and it's just you talking at the audience. It sounds like you're going to have authentic engagement, people actually engaged in this process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's going to be a lot of smart people in that room, and I wouldn't be exercising humility if I thought I had all the answers from the front. My goal is to give some people some things to think about, but also some discussion points, and discuss some of the big elephants that are going to be in the room. Like I'll share with you one of the biggest elephants in the room in law enforcement is leading former peers. And how is that a test of character?
100%. Actually, that brings me to the second follow-up question I have before we close out, which is folks coming to the ILEETA conference are generally, there are a lot of administrators, chiefs, captains, lieutenants of that rank category. But the vast majority that come to our conference are sergeant and below, often not ranked, but field training officers and that sort of thing, who are working in these sometimes many of them are working in perfect organizations of character. Did I say that right?
Yep.
Many of them are working in really good ones, but there are many who are in very corrosive environments. What would you say to that corporal or sergeant who's going to come to your class that knows they're going to go back to an agency that is struggling with some of this ethical drift that we're talking about?
First of all, I've been there. Secondly, in the midst of that situation I was in, I had to make the decision that, you know what, I might not love my organization, but I got to love my people. And in the midst of that, I can't control whatever they above me are doing. But what I can do is make that team that I am responsible for, those individuals that I am responsible, make that the best damn place to work within this organization that needs help. I want everybody in this organization to look at our team and say, you know what, I may not like what's going on up here, but man, if I could be on that team, if I could be on that squad and be part of that, that's my responsibility as a leader, as a lower level, mid-level leader, maybe in an organization that's you wouldn't hold up as an example as a great organization. That's still my responsibility, my duty, my moral obligation to those folks I'm called to lead.
I love it. Put the nail on the head right there. All right. So with these last couple of minutes we have here, I just want to ask you to kind of put a bow on all this for us. If I'm sitting on the fence whether or not to attend your class, because there are so many great classes that I could attend, whether or not to attend your class, why would one want to make sure they show up in your class and spend that time with you?
First of all, I'll go to what I hear over and over and over again is, I've never heard anything like this before in law enforcement training. That's what I've heard. I've heard over and over again that we rarely get spoken to about this topic, and with a understanding that we have so much control over it ourselves. We get a lot of good training out there, but a lot of it, sometimes we feel like, well, in a perfect world, that'd be nice. But everything about our character has to do with who we are and our own choices, no matter what our circumstances are that we deal with. And if you walk into that session, I promise you that after taking the character assessment, first of all, it's going to become personal for you, because you're going to have something in your character. We all have things in our character that we need to work on, and the assessment was probably going to help you see that. Secondly, you're going to come out with a lesson that you can share with others, which is, no matter what's going on around you, you still have control of the most important thing you have as a leader, and that's your own character, right? And the number one reason why people want to follow us, as I'm going to point out in the session, is character. The number one reason leaders fail is character. So the two most important things, why people want to follow us and why leaders fail, is 100% in our control. And when we walk out there, everybody seems to feel empowered by that. No matter what their situation they're in, they feel like, okay, I'm back to who I know I need to be. I know I got some room to grow. I've got a plan now to do that. And now maybe I can share it with others so I can have a larger impact on my organization.
I love it. Thank you so much, Dave. So again, Joe Willis here with ILEETA for the ILEETA Learning Lab. Here with Dave Anderson. He's teaching a class at ILEETA 2026 called How to Train and Develop Leaders of Character Within Your Agency. Having shared a similar pathway through West Point, although Dave was commissioned there, I just worked there. Truly an honor to spend a little bit of time with you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in March. Stick around. We'll have a brief conversation after I end the recording.
Thanks.